Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and with me, as always, is Brian Michaels. Brian, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. This week was not one of our strongest in terms of the movies we watched, but that's what happens when you revisit some of these movies.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where we picked movies that we were, and this is going to be kind of a running theme for at least probably about 2 or 3 of these films, where we were fond of these movies back in the day. We've grown since then, and these movies don't hit the same way they did anymore. But we
Or who knows? Maybe I didn't even like it back then, and just like, did I like this? And you watch it, like, yeah, no.
It's one of those things where it's just like, man, I was dumb when I was young. Kind of thing.
We were much more easily entertained. Yes.
Exactly. We were much more easily entertained, which we'll touch on that more when we get to that movie. We're not going to start with that movie. Today, starting episode 13, we're going to go with our revisited film. And this is one where the revisited and the feature, I think you and I were both like, yes, I mean, we're 100% talking about these two movies, right? And if you weren't into it, they were going to be my pick anyway. So these are probably the two easiest picks of the week for us. We're going to go with our revisited first. Our revisited is a thriller from 2003 that really, I would say, is an underrated film that not enough people know about, that more people should know about. And that is the payphone sniper thriller, Phone Booth. That's
a wide genre, too. There's a lot of those.
That genre. Phone Booth came out April 4th, 2003, had a budget of $13 million, had a weekend opening of $15 million, was number one its opening weekend, and it was its only week at number one, had a finished box office of $97.8 million, $46.56 million domestic, $51.27 million international. I love this movie. It's so simple, and it's so basic, which usually those two terms for movies is a negative thing. On this film, that's not the case. It's a straightforward story. You have this character named Stu, played by Colin Farrell. He's a PR, he's a publicist. He's a publicist guy, and you're kind of just watching him for like the first 5 minutes of the movie, kind of working his magic and stuff like that. And then he picks up a payphone and he calls Katie Holmes, who is always a phenomenal actress. Yeah. Come on, that whole performance was not good. But nonetheless, but then he hangs up the payphone and the phone rings again. And instead of walking away, he randomly picks it up and starts the beginning of probably the worst day of Colin Farrell's life. This film, I remember watching this, and this is where you and I are going to argue, because you're going to argue against this, and I'm going to argue for it. I got so this movie. I was just like, okay, I don't know if this is a big thing. And I remember I was working at the movie theater, and this came out, and granted, I know the cast, I know who's in it, but I don't know what they're doing. And when I heard that Kiefer Sutherland was the voice sniper, I was like, yes. I was fucking I was like, oh my God, yes. A movie where we just get to listen to Kiefer Sutherland just mess with Colin Farrell the entire film. I was 100% on board with that. And because I love Kiefer Sutherland. I do. He's one of my favorite actors, even though he plays hacky sack in a yellow sweater, and we never let that down ever. You're like, were we gonna make it through this without me bringing it up? Hell no.
Of course not. No.
but I love the mind games he plays with Colin Farrell in this movie. I think he does a fantastic job. Forrest Whitaker, I think, does great in his small role. But of course, standout Colin Farrell puts on a great performance in this role. He has to carry this whole film. Basically having to do all the acting in this. I mean, Kiefer does a lot of great voice acting, but it is all on Colin Farrell to make this movie work. The suspense, keeping you not bored through this movie. Now, granted, this movie is like an hour 20, hour 30, so it's short.
Yeah, it's 81 minutes. Yeah,
it's short, but that's the whole thing. It's about a guy in a phone booth the entire time being talked to in a phone conversation. It's up to Colin Farrell to keep us entertained for that hour 20 minutes, and he does it. This is one of my favorite underrated films. Brian, I think you're kind of in agreement with me about its underratedness. What are your thoughts on Phone Booth?
I agree. When I saw this on the list, I'm like, that's one I really want to talk about. Because I remember when I saw this movie, two things stood out to me. One was just, like you said, it's just such a simplistic, basic premise, but it just really works. But I mean, sometimes that works the best. I mean, you think about like Mad Max Fury Road is basically we're going to drive there and we're going to drive back. That's the entire movie. But, it's an awesome movie because of what they do with it. And this is the same thing. Yes, it's just a guy on a phone booth, basically being held in that phone booth because of a sniper. But the way they go about the story and just the tension they ratchet up, even there's through conversations and things, it really works. The other thing that struck me was this is the first movie that started to turn me around on Colin Farrell. Because when Colin Farrell kind of appeared on the scene, he was, how every once in a while Hollywood gets like that one it actor who they just want to shove down your throat. They started pushing him as like, ooh, he's the next guy, he's the next star. We're gonna put him in everything. We're gonna shove him in Minority Report. We're gonna shove him in. I don't remember. There's like 3 or 4 movies in a row that's kind of like really pushing Colin Farrell, even though it was like, who is this guy?
It was American Outlaws, Hearts War, Minority Report, Phone Booth, The Recruit, and then he was Bullseye, Daredevil, and then he did SWAT. But like, all of those movies I just said were within 2 years of each other.
Yeah. So, but the first couple of movies, I'm like, I don't care about this guy. I mean, I didn't hate him. I was like, just stop pushing him down our throats. But then I saw this movie, and I'm like, you know what? I kind of like this guy. I think he's got talent. I think he's become range. I think he's likable. Now, he can't forgive, the studios for trying to push him down your throat or whatever. But that's not his fault. He's just trying to, become an actor. But so that's one thing I took away from this movie. As far as the rest of the cast, Katie Holmes is Katie Holmes. I mean, she's not a great thespian or anything. I fell in love with her on Dawson's Creek because I was just the right age, and she pretty much kind of always plays herself, But so she was like whatever. As far as the Kiefer Sutherland thing goes, I really like Kiefer Sutherland as well. I think he has a great voice for doing the role they did here, where it's just his voice the entire time. My only problem with it, and we're going to have a disagreement about this, is this interpretation of it, is that I felt like they need to do one of two things. Either have Kiefer Sutherland as the voice, but don't try to do the little fake out at the end. Or if you're going to do the fake out at the end, you can't use Kiefer Sutherland because everyone knows his voice and like, that's not him. But now you interpreted it differently.
Yeah, see, you interpreted it as that they were trying to fake the entire audience out. That Kiefer Sutherland was the pizza guy that we see at the beginning of the film. I didn't take it as them trying to put one over on us. I took them as them trying to put one over on Colin Farrell because that was the only interaction that Colin Farrell had with someone prior to the phone call. So that's who they could put the blame on, and Kiefer could get away. To me, it was never a switch around on us, the viewers. We all know who Kiefer Sutherland is. We all know his voice. We all know that it's Kiefer. Colin Farrell's character doesn't know what Kiefer Sutherland looks like. He doesn't know what he sounds like or anything like that. It's a misdirect for the character so that way at the end he finds out he thinks that he's safe and he realizes at the end, oh, I'm not safe. This guy's still watching me and I still better be good. You took it as that way. I took it as they were just trying to misdirect Colin Farrell and put him at an ease of safety only for the rug to get pulled out from under him at the end of the film. But like I said, that's not something that ruins the movie here or there for us. Either
way, whichever we do it, Kiefer Sutherland still does a great job just as a killer. It's one of those roles where he's got to do basically all his acting with his voice, and it's sometimes a little bit over the top, trying too hard to be menacing and villainous, a little bit, but it still works.
That's the greatness of Jack. That's the greatness of Jack Bauer is the voice.
Well, that's just it. This was right on the cusp of his resurgence because he had done the Brad Pack stuff and Young Guns and Flatliners and all that stuff. He kind of faded into direct-to-video obscurity for a little while, did a couple failed TV series and things, and then 24 hit just, I think, like a year and a half before this 24 premiered. And so this is kind of just right before he's come back.
When he shot this was probably right when he was shooting 24.
Yeah.
So, I guarantee you if he had shot this after probably the first season of 24, maybe it would have been maybe a little bit bigger, a little more pumped up of a thing. But I think this is one of those movies where it's Joel Schumacher, so it's not like it's an indie film by any means.
Well, that was the other thing, actually, now you mentioned that. I was talking about Colin Farrell. It kind of changed my mind on him. And I didn't necessarily change my mind on him. But Joel Schumacher is one of those directors who's gets a lot of shit for like his Batman movies and things because they're really, bizarre with the bat nipples and the neon lights and how he kind of, made it so silly. But I mean, the man makes some good movies. He made Time to Kill. He made this. He made Lost Boys. And so it's like, you know what? Take him out of the Batman thing. He's actually a pretty good director.
I mean, I take it as this. First off, I love A Time to Kill. I don't think I ever have seen Lost Boys all the way through. I think I've only seen it in parts. As a kid, obviously, I don't think I ever watched it. I realize
those both have Kiefer Sutherland in them. That's at least 3.
Yeah, they're all Kiefer. They're all Kiefer. But I think with Batman, I think he was just trying something. I think he saw what wow, director, first two. I'm blanking.
Tim Burton.
Thank you. Oh my God, I had like Wes Craven. I was like, it's not Wes Craven. He saw what Tim Burton did. He goes, they want me to liven it up. They want me to have it not be so dark. Let's go super colorful with it. Yeah, was it a failed attempt? Sure. I don't think you should virtue this guy's career out of it, but I think this was this kind of like the first, not the first movie, because obviously there's like at least 5 some years between this and like Batman and Robin. But it's like, I feel like this was the first movie after Batman and Robin that people were like, oh, Joel Schumacher put on a good movie.
Yeah, I think that's why I was trying to put myself back in the mindset of when this came out. And I think that's one of the things I was thinking. It was Time to Kill was between his 2 Batman, and they did a lot of small stuff in between, like Flawless, Bad Cop. Oh, there's Tigerland was actually with the first Colin Farrell movie they tried to push on us, and then Phone Booth. Yeah, so this is kind of this is one of the very few post Batman ones he did where people started taking him seriously.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked about Schumacher's direction in this, because once again the whole story is focused on this phone booth, that he kind of does like almost like the comic book, like picture in picture to show you stuff happening around it, because they obviously can't take the camera away from Colin's character. So they're like, okay, you guys need to kind of see what's going on, but we can't take the camera away. So here's a picture in picture scene to kind of emphasize stuff a little bit more. But I think it's one of the things where it's like, if you've seen Phone Booth, I think most people appreciate it and really, really like it. But I feel like a lot of people have never heard of this movie or have never seen the movie because it's like, oh, it's Colin Farrell in a phone booth for 80
years. And I remember even at the time people were talking about Colin Farrell in a phone booth.
That's a totally different other film.
Colin Farrell in a phone booth, not Colin Firth, for an hour and a half. It sounds like I'd pass on it too. But it is a good thriller. It's definitely dated. It's surprisingly dated, actually. Not only just because he's in a phone booth, but I mean just the fact that when you see that in these scenes on the street, you don't have 50,000 people with their cell phone cameras filming him and things like that.
There was an actual lady with him.
Somebody had a big old shoulder held camera. It wasn't even not even like a news guy.
A woman holding an actual camcorder. I laughed so hard when I saw that. It's got
some weird. I mean, like Ben Foster has a weird cameo in this, which is
he's like
no reason to be in it, and it's probably his worst acting ever.
It got to be reasonable.
It was so pointless. It was just showed up on set and they're like, put me in the movie.
That's the thing with Ben Foster. With Ben Foster and also another actor we're going to be talking about in another film, Jonathan Tucker. They're both fantastic actors, and they just kind of just show up in movies. Kind of like Matt Damon. Matt Damon shows up in films you're not expecting him to be in, and everyone feels like, oh my God, Matt Damon's in this. Ben Foster and Jonathan Tucker don't get that treatment, which I think they're better actors personally than Matt Damon. But they just show up in random films. And most people were like, oh, okay. Whereas like you and I go, oh, yeah.
Oh. Because, I mean, they're both really good at doing like serious drama, but they also both do great comedy. Like Ben Foster, one of my favorite movies of his is Get Over It. It's just a comedy with Kirsten Dunst. And one of my favorites from Jonathan Tucker is called 100 Girls.
Yes.
Which no one's heard of this movie except you and me, apparently. Actually, you and me and my best friend. We know we've heard it.
Let's hold the Jonathan Tucker talk till we get to the other movie. Okay. I was like, I gotta remember to talk about this, and I almost forgot because we almost ended our phone booth chat without talking about this. This movie gave me one of the best / meanest pranks I've ever done. So you remember back in the day when it used to be a cool thing to get, like you go to a website and you had like the voice, like they would take like clips from movies and like you could like clip like Family Guy, like
soundboard.
Thank you, a soundboard. They had a phone booth soundboard of Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna come off like such an asshole. And she was a trooper about this, but my mom
Your mom.
He did it to my mom. She had watched the movie. She loved it. She was out mowing the yard one day. And I knew she had her phone on her. And so I called her. And I called her while she was out there. And I started doing the Kiefer Sutherland soundboard to her.
I thought you told me you had like a laser pointer too. It had a red dot on her. I did.
I fucking did. I'm lying in the window. And I'm doing this. And I'm hitting like all the buttons. And she's like... I just started laughing. She was like, "You son of a bitch!" And it was just like, it was the only person I could.
And that was the day Sean's mom left him.
Oh, mean. But no, it's like that. I don't pull like a lot of pranks on family members a lot, but that was one of those where I was like, I probably shouldn't have done that. That was probably not cool. But it was one of those where I was like, this is gonna be such a cool prank. But she was the only one. Like at the moment, was like, this is the only time this prank's ever gonna work, and I did it to her. I apologize. I made it up to her, but it was one of those things where it's like every time I hear his voice in phone booth, I'm like, I totally pranked my mom that one day during the summer day when she was trying to mow the lawn and do housework, and here I am in the house trying to terrify her with a sniper.
Yeah. No, I will admit, rewatching it now, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I did back then when I watched it. I still think it's a good, solid thriller. I'm not as high on it. I mean, most of my complaints are just little nitpicks, which I won't go into here. Yeah. But it's good. It's a solid thriller. It's just I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I remembered enjoying it.
I enjoyed it just about as much as I did from the first time I seen it. I mean, granted, take Forrest Whitaker, Kiefer, and Colin out of the equation. The rest of the acting around them is not great. I don't think that they're supposed to be stellar performances. I think that they're performances that fit the film. Like the prostitutes across the street, they're horrible acting, but I think they're supposed to be horrible acting. Katie Holmes is not good. His wife, Radha Mitchell, she's fine. And then not gonna lie, the kid at the beginning, what's his name? Like his assistant.
Oh, his intern, whatever.
Yeah, his intern assistant. I was like,
I don't know the name.
Jay Baruchel? It's like, no, it's not Jay Baruchel. It's like,
no, it was nobody recognizable. No.
Yeah, exactly. But if you guys want to see an underrated gem from Joel Schumacher, Colin Farrell, and of course the always, in my opinion, always great Kiefer Sutherland, unless he's playing hacky sack in a yellow sweater, then you have to check out Phone Booth. It is, like I said, it's 80 minutes. It's quick. But it is 80 minutes that keeps you going till the very end. There is not a the dullest moment is the first 5-10 minutes before this stuff happens, because you're getting used to Colin Farrell, and even then it's quick.
Yeah, even then it's fast paced. You're setting up him as this smarmy PR guy. So,
so and then when as soon as he picks up that phone, you hear Kiefer's voice, you are locked in for the next 70 minutes.
Yeah,
and it does not let you go. Phone Booth isn't on anything.
You can watch it free with ads on the Roku channel, which is, I mean, you'll have to have a Roku machine. It's just a website you can go to and watch it. Other than that, you can rent it and everywhere else. So.
Gotcha. But definitely check the guys out if you guys have not. Going to our next film. Now we're going into what we talked about at the beginning of the show. Shut up, Brian. There are movies that when you're a child that you watch and you like them. You watch them a lot. One that, and this is not the one we were talking about, but there are certain films like Blank Check. When we were a kid, I think all of us as kids liked the movie Blank Check. A kid gets $1 million and gets to buy everything he wants, which watching it today as an adult, you're like, this is ridiculous. None of this would work and happen. But as a kid, you enjoyed it. And there's a ton of movies. Like there's TV cartoon shows that I loved watching as a kid that I watched. Like I couldn't wait to rewatch them now as an adult. And I watch them now. I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. Peter Venkman is the same voice as Garfield from the Garfield cartoon, from the Ghostbusters cartoon. And that's the weirdest little tidbit I've ever noticed. The real Ghostbusters cartoon, Peter Venkman is voiced by the same voice actor who voices Garfield in the Garfield cartoon. Yet Bill Murray is Peter Venkman in the movies, and he also voices Garfield in the movies. That is the weirdest coincidence ever to me. Like that is so that blows my mind. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I was like, why are you going off with this?
Because it's one of those things where it's like I just think it's a cool little tidbit. But this is my pick. I picked this because and granted, yes, Matrix came out this weekend, Winter Soldier, two Fast and the Furious movies, and there's 2 other movies as well. And we're like, these are all big movies, but they're talked about to death. And we didn't.
There's nothing more to say about it, especially when there's so many said.
Like we could talk about Hellboy, we could talk about The Matrix and all this stuff, but it's like then we're just like every other movie show that talks about the same films over and over again. So we wanted to pick something different. So when it came to knocking those off the list, which granted, there's going to be some because we are going to talk about those movies. We are, because there's just nothing else to talk about. I saw this movie. I was like, as a kid, I loved this movie. And then I had to watch it recently, and I made Brian watch it. And Brian was like, why are you doing this to me? And that is the 1992 animated film Rock-a-doodle. Rock-a-doodle came out April 3rd, 1992, had a budget of $18 million, which is more than Phone Booth. Had a weekend opening of $2.6 million. It was number 10 its opening weekend behind White Man Can't Jump in its second week, Basic Instinct in its third week, Beethoven in its first week, Straight Talk in its first week, Thunderheart in its first week, Wayne's World in its 8th week, My Cousin Vinny in its 4th week, The Cutting Edge in its second week, and Ladybugs in its second week. And it finished with a box office of $11.65 million. Like I said, as a kid, I liked the movie. It's a Rooster Elvis. I thought the music as a kid was catchy. You know, it's a little kid who gets thrown into an animated world, turns into a cat, and he goes on this mission to try and bring this rooster, Chanticleer is his name, back to the farm to raise the sun again because it's been raining ever since he left. It's a it's a fun basic story for children. As an adult, and Brian's biting his tongue so hard. As an adult, yeah, it's pretty awful. It's awful. I will now stop, and just like with It Follows last week, I'm sure Brian's got a shitload to say about this because he was hating it from beginning. Like within the first 5 minutes, he sent me a text of "Kill me now." So, Brian, Rock-a-doodle.
Actually, I fooled you. I love this movie. This was great.
You're so full of shit.
No. No, I mean, well, here's the thing is I appreciate that there are movies that you look back on with nostalgia goggles and you just love because of when you saw it at the age. I did not get to watch this as a child because I am old. So, I mean, by the time, even when it came out, I was, no longer a child. So watching it now for the first time.
I was 5.
Yeah. So, for the first time ever seeing this now, oh dear God, this was hard to sit through. I will be honest. I mean, we've sat through a lot of really bad movies.
An hour. It was like an hour and 14 minutes. It was less than Phone Booth, and you were like, "This was so hard to get through."
It was. I mean, there's movies there's bad movies you watch, and they're at least fun to make fun of, or there's bad movies you need to watch. You watch, and okay, they're boring, but at least maybe there's cool effects or something or some good acting performances to get something out of it. This just had nothing for me. I mean, just a little background. I'm not an Elvis fan. Don Bluth animation, for the most part, bores the hell out of me, and it's not even very good animation, with very few exceptions. And so when I saw this movie, and literally, like you said, 5 minutes in, I was just like, oh, I already knew how bad this was going to be. And I was just bored. I didn't like the music. I didn't like the story, which I'm not even sure I followed most of the story because it was just like whatever. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, I'll be honest. I went in expecting to not like it because of Webjet.
You were hating on that. You were on the hate train for this way before you saw the first clip. You watched a 1 minute clip on YouTube. And you're like, Sean, really? And I'm like,
well, no, because like I said, I went in knowing the Elvis and knowing the Don Bluth animation, and I had actually worked in a video store when this came out, so I'd like seen trailers and clips of it all the time, and I was like, so when I watched that one trailer or 1 minute clip to remind me, I'm like, oh yeah, this is not going to be good for me. So yeah, it did not work for me at all. Specifically, first of all, I don't understand why they had to have a live action segment at all in this movie. There was no purpose whatsoever for it to be a live action boy sucked into this animal world.
There really is no reason. I can't defend that.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you have the boy who also was the voice of the same character when he's with a cat, when he's in the animated world.
Edmund.
The most annoying voice. Nothing annoys me more than in kids' movies and TV shows with like kids who can't speak correctly. Like he can't say his Oz. So especially when he's yelling Chanticleer, Chanticleer. I'm like, R's, kid.
You could make a drinking game out of this, and you have to
Oh.
drink every time the kid says Chanticleer, and you would be dead.
You'd be dead. Especially in the last 20 minutes, they yell it like 50 times in a row.
Oh god. He
But
screams it so many times.
So I mean, there's that. The songs I don't think are memorable at all. I'm trying to think of anything else specifically about it, but I really just
You got Christopher Plummer as the villain.
It seemed like generic Don Bluth villain number 37. You know, it's just like whatever. What do you got to say about it? I don't know where to go from here.
You don't like Don Bluth. I get that. But I mean, Don Bluth was my childhood. I mean, you got Secret Life of Nim. You got the Dragon's Lair game. You got American Tail, The Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven. I mean, those are like American Tail and Land Before Time are like two of my favorite animated films of all time. Like that was my childhood. So this was right in that that's where Rock-a-doodle was. It was right with those. But yes, this is not Land Before Time. This is not An American Tail or Secret Life, or not Secret Life. It's just Secret of Nim. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's like, as a kid, I thought the tunes were catchy as a kid. Now, I think the one point where you were like, I can't stand this. I'm like, oh, come on. Let it shine on you. Let it shine. His father gave him a voice, and that's why it's so strong. I started quoting it, and you just tell Brian was just getting angrier as I was quoting lyrics from the movie. But no, the movie's plot's very, very basic. But even then, they try to throw weird subplots into it, which there's just not enough time in the movie to have those subplots. The owls are magic, but there's no explanation to why they are. They just are.
Owls are magic, apparently.
The movie gets really dark at certain points. Like it's kind of a dark cartoon. But yeah, it's kind of all over the place. Like as an adult now, watching it, be like, wow, this movie is bad.
I was also surprised by how bad the animation itself was, which, I mean, not every movie is going to be perfect animation, but this is the same year as Aladdin, a year after Beauty and the Beast. And yes, they're not Disney, but Don Bluth always wanted to be Disney.
But compared to American Tail and All Dogs.
But even compared to those.
No, I was saying, compared to those, yes, Rock-a-doodle is not in their realm at all. And this, like I said, this movie cost more than Phone Booth did. But it's one of those things where it's just like, once again, I'm not defending this movie. As a kid, I enjoyed this film. I enjoyed Little Monsters and the what was it called? It had Neil Patrick Harris in it. I don't even know if it was an actual movie. The one-eyed Purple People Eater. Oh God,
I've heard of a movie by that name. I don't know anything about it though.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up. But it's these weird children's movies. I said that, and I guarantee the people watching, they're like, oh. But it's one of those things where, there's these children's movies, and I'm sure, Brian, when you were a kid, there were movies that you probably were like, I love that movie as a kid, and then you watch it as an adult, and Purple People Eater, that's what it was called, 1988.
No, everything I loved as a kid is perfect. It never got worse.
Like on Disney Plus, Mr. Boogedy. I love Mr. Boogedy. I guarantee if I watch Mr. Boogedy now, it's probably awful. But as a kid, I loved Mr. Boogedy and The Bride of Boogedy. That got made fun of heavily when Disney Plus came out last year. But I remember as a kid, I loved those two movies.
No, I mean, I know how that goes. I mean, not so much with cartoons with me, because more with me as a kid, it was more like TV cartoons. But also even just adult, not adult, but not kiddie TV shows and things I watch. I mean, A-Team and things like that. The Incredible Hulk, the old version of Lou Ferrigno. If I tried to watch those today, oh my God, that'd be so awful. But back in the day, I was like apeshit.
I'm telling you this right now, and we're gonna have to watch this because I think I made this one of my picks for later in the year. I'm terrified to rewatch Monster Squad. I'm terrified because Monster Squad was probably my favorite movie as a kid, with Land Before Time and before Jurassic Park came out. Granted,
I will tell you,
I'm terrified to watch it.
I will tell you, you will not like it as much as you did as a kid, but it could be much, much worse. It's actually not terrible. Okay. It is written by Shane Black, so it's got that going for it.
True. True. This is one of those things where it's like everything that I've watched for the most part back when I was a kid, and I watch it now, I'm like, oh wow, this was not that good. Like Turtles, like yes, you think the Turtle movies are bad. I know the Turtle movies are not good, but I still love them. But like something like this, like Rock-a-doodle, or like I said, as a kid, I really liked Blank Check, and I had to watch Blank Check last, I think, a month or two, and yeah, the movie's horrible now. And there's stuff in that movie that's like, wow, you were not paying attention when you're making this film, guys. But yeah, I can't defend Rock-a-doodle, and there's gonna be movies like that. Like I said, you did that with The Vanishing. You thought very fondly of it, and then when you went back to it, you're like, oh, that's not as good as I remembered. And Rock-a-doodle was kind of the same way. I went back and watched it, and as I was watching it, I was just like, oh man, Brian's gonna hate this. It's like, I'm like 20 minutes in and I'm bored.
Like, I liked it and I don't like it anymore, so Brian's really gonna hate it.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. I was just like, man, Brian's gonna have a rough go of this if I am bored out of my mind. And I'm like, Brian's gonna be so mad at me.
I'm not even mad, because it's one of those things. It's like, even when you suggested, I'm like, you know what? I've never seen the movie, and I'm not, especially if someone else likes it, I'm always willing, like, I'll check this out. I never saw it, I've heard things about it, so let's check it out. And they're not all gonna be winners, and whatever. It's like you said, it's short. It was like 70 minutes out of my life, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. We've had to watch worse things.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? We never even mentioned how this gives whole new meaning to the term chicken breasts.
Cue the picture. Right there. I already have you lined up for that. But yeah, Rock-a-doodle. It's not on. Is it on anything? I don't think it's on.
No, if you don't want to rent it, is somebody has it uploaded to YouTube, chopped into like 17 4-minute sections. If you want to do it that way, but otherwise, no.
Yeah. Let's move on. I will take my lashings for picking a bad movie. I know next week's movie will completely redeem myself, but this week I will take the hit.
Totally redeem yourself.
Yeah, totally redeem myself next week. Next we are going to Brian's pick, and once again Brian picks a movie that I'm like here's the thing. Like, yes, granted, I made Brian watch a kids movie. How dare I? Brian picks these weird horror films or weird thrillers. I'm just like, what the hell am I watching? Granted, this one's recent, and in terms of recent, it's like it's in the 2000s, but it's just one of those movies where it's like, this is just a weird film. And that is 2008's The Ruins. The Ruins came out April 4th, 2008, had a budget of $8 million, had a weekend opening of $8 million, was number 5 its opening weekend behind 21, still haven't seen that movie, in its second week, Nim's Island in its first week, Leatherheads in its first week, and Horton Hears a Who in its fourth week. Had a finished box office of $22.8 million, $17.4 million domestic, and $5.38 million international. Yeah, The Ruins. Granted, when Brian made this pick, I thought it was Green Inferno. And so I was like, why is Ryan making me – what? I keep saying Ryan. I'm sorry. Why is Brian keep making me watch cannibal movies? And then I finally realized what the movie was like, oh, this is the Killer Vine movie.
Actually, I think the word you said is, oh, this is the plant movie.
Yeah, not the happening, but the other killer plant movie. Yeah. But no, when you picked it, I initially was thinking that you were picking Green Inferno. So I was like, why do you watch cannibalism films? But yeah, Ryan, or God damn.
Next week's Armie Hammer. No.
Brian, go ahead with your movie, The Ruins.
Okay. Well, The Ruins, this is kind of, there was this actually most of the 2000s, there was this trend of these, American tourists on vacation horror movies. I mean, there was Perfect Getaway, and there was Turistas, and there was this, and there was, of course, the Hostel movies and all these kind of things. And it was just kind of thing. It's Americans go somewhere and they get murdered or killed or somehow. So this was just kind of another one of those. But the thing about this one is that there weren't killers after them. It wasn't criminals. It wasn't murders. It wasn't ghosts. It wasn't anything like that. This was just nature.
I mean,
well, they never really. It's never really expressly covered if it's like supernatural. I don't think it is. I think it's supposed to just be nature. It's just these plants, but we don't know.
Really,
we don't know.
There's
anyway, these basically there's some 20-something.
Five of them.
Well, there's 4, and then they meet another guy.
Well, 6 and they bring the other dude.
Yeah. So they are on vacation, and then this guy says, "Hey, there you can. I know of this place. There's ruins. They're kind of off the beaten path." And they're like, this is the kind of vacation we really want. We don't want the touristy places. We want to go to this, see something, experience something. So they go to this uncharted place, basically. When they get there, basically, as they step onto the grounds of the ruins, and specifically into the plants, the local, because they're really indigenous tribes, because they're clothes and everything, but they're the local people are basically keeping them captive on this pyramid, essentially. Yeah. Because they know that they know what the kids don't know is that they're all going to be basically infected and killed, and so it's a very slow burn kind of horror movie. It's not a lot of action to it. It's not a lot of real thrills. I mean, there are moments to it, but it's really kind of a slow burn, more kind of that growing sense of dread, and how are they going to survive? Are they going to stay here till they die? Are they going to get killed by the plants? Whatever it is, and of course, when you say you get killed by the plants, it sounds silly. It's happening, the wind's going to kill you. But here I thought it worked. Like Sean with Rock-a-doodle, not to the same extent. I didn't enjoy it as much as I kind of remembered. I mean, I never thought it was any kind of great cinema or anything. But honestly, it was looking through the list for this week. It was kind of slim pickings. So I'm like, you know what? This is one that
slim pickings once we took all the blockbusters out of the equation.
Well, that's it. Once you took all the blockbusters out, we were talking about the main two already. So I'm like, you know what? This is one that this fits in that category that I like to choose from, which is like movies I have seen that not a lot of other people have seen. Who I think it deserves people to give it a shot. Check it out. It's something different. And what were your thoughts? You've seen it for the first time, so
yeah. I once I got into the meat of what the movie was, I remembered it fully. I'm like, have I seen this film? Or
had you seen it or no?
No, because I did not remember any of the kills. So clearly, because I didn't remember the kills, I was like, okay, I have not seen it. I probably haven't seen the premise and the trailers. Because I remember that. I remember because as soon as they step on the plant and everyone freaks out, I'm like, oh, it's as soon as they touch the plant. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. So I picked up on what the hook was right away, and I was like, okay, I remember this, but I didn't see it. The one thing that helps the ruins is that it's got a great young cast. Like we talked about him earlier, Jonathan Tucker. Jonathan Tucker. If you guys don't know who Jonathan Tucker is, like I said, 100 Girls. Brian and I both seen that movie. It's an indie film. It's not something that was out in theaters. I don't really believe, but it's
out. The thing I think people know most from, he was in the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, in the Jessica Biel Texas Chainsaw, he's in that. If you guys have not seen this, and I think I talked about this during my review of the movie that you were super excited for that I just watched. Game Over? Not Game Over. Frank Gorilla's movie. Frank Gorilla.
Boss Level.
Boss Level. There's a TV show. It was on DirecTV for 3 years. It's now on Netflix. It's called Kingdom. It's about an MMA family. Jonathan Tucker is in it. Nick Jonas is in it. Frank Gorilla's in it. Paul Walter Hauser is in it. It is 3 seasons. It's fantastic. And Jonathan Tucker is the standout with Gorillo in that film, in that show. If you guys have not seen that show, and you guys like Cobra Kai, and you want more of a serious MMA kind of show, family, watch Kingdom. It's fantastic. But Jonathan Tucker is like Ben Foster. He is and he's now got that new show. What's it, Debris, or whatever.
Yes, just started. It's starting soon.
He's the lead on that now. Jonathan Tucker's great, and then you add it's Shawn Ashmore in this.
Shawn Ashmore, yeah.
Yeah, Shawn, not the other one. And then you got Jenna Malone and Laura Ramsey, all good standout, solid, young teenage actors. So cast-wise, it's really well done.
And Joe Anderson, who was in The Crazies, which we talked about earlier this year.
Yes, Joe Anderson. Yeah, and isn't he the guy who takes them there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the deputy to Oliphant in Crazies, right? Yeah. So he's also good in his parts. Like Brian said, the problem with the film is that it's a slow burn. If you're expecting a lot of crazy shit to happen, crazy stuff does happen.
But, it's got some sure gross out moments, that's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely has the gross out. It's just that it's a very slow burn. When crazy stuff does happen, you're like, oh damn, but it's not like over the top that like is like, oh crap, because they're stuck on this like top of this ruin for the entire film. So there's not a whole lot of places they can go. So it's nothing crazy that they can't really run away from because they really have nowhere to go. So it's one of those movies where it's like you really kind of hindered to the location that you're at.
Like Phone Booth.
Exactly, like Phone Booth, but Phone Booth does it so much better. But it's just with them, it's just about these four characters arguing for most of the time. And by the time we get to the actual end of the movie, you're just like, all right, let's go. But cast-wise, really, really good. It's decent. It's not something that I would like go out of my way and say, you need to see The Ruins. But like I said, anything with Jonathan Tucker, I'm going to give it a shot, which I did in this. And like I said, as soon as I saw him, my interest level peaked a little bit more. I'm not a huge fan of Jenna Malone, but she was decent in the film. And then, like I said, Laura Ramsey and Shawn Ashmore, they're both fine. But Jonathan Tucker, as soon as I saw him, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this like a serious actual paying attention to.
Yeah. Even revisiting this, it's like I just think it's kind of it's okay. I don't think it's great. It was my pick, but again, it was one I was revisiting after a long time. I haven't seen it probably since in the last 15 years at least. Actually, no, it came out less than 15 years ago. I haven't seen it in 10 years. But I mean, I still enjoy it. It's still worth watching. I didn't love it, but it's something to check out. Like you said, it's got a great cast. And actually, I wanted to mention, going through Jonathan Tucker's stuff, this movie he and Ben Foster were in together called Hostage.
I was literally about to bring it up. Sometimes it scares me how you and I just are zoned in. I was going to say, give me another movie with these two guys in it that's like Hostage. And if you guys have never seen Hostage, first off, if that ever falls on one of our weekends, we are going to talk about it. Because Hostage is a fantastic, it's basically like Panic Room, but with Bruce Willis, Jonathan Tucker, and Ben Foster. And if you guys have not seen that movie, you need to see that movie. It is great. But if anything about watching this film, if it's made you guys put eyes on Jonathan Tucker, then we win. Because people need to recognize Jonathan Tucker, whether it's from 100 Girls, which is basically a college raunchy comedy, which works, or Kingdom on Netflix. Go check that out. It's great. I don't even think Brian's seen that. You should check that out, Brian.
No, you keep telling me to, and I mean to. Television shows is hard with me because I don't really have time to invest in a lot of TV shows.
It's literally 30 episodes.
But it's been on my watch list forever, so I'll check it out eventually.
But yeah, Ruins. Is it on anything?
Yes, it is available to watch. I think like all over the place. It's available to watch on Amazon Prime, on Paramount Plus, on Crackle, on Plex, which apparently a thing. So yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys want to see a Jonathan Tucker horror film, go watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But if you've already seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you want to see Jonathan Tucker in something new, watch The Ruins. Going to our feature film, yes, we did say that like The Matrix, Fast and the Furious, and Winter Soldier gets talked about to death. This movie also probably gets talked about to death, but we wanted to talk about this movie. This is, I would say, it's not even a cult classic. I would say that it is a modern day classic. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, a modern teen classic, definitely. Yeah.
And it is the, I guess, Shakespeare adaptation, because that's what it basically is. 1999's 10 Things I Hate About You. 10 Things I Hate About You came out April 2nd, 1999, had a budget of $30 million, had a weekend opening of $8.3 million, which was number 2 its opening weekend behind The Matrix, which clearly it wasn't going to stand a chance. What? Yeah, I know, right? It had a finished box office of $53.48 million, $38.17 million domestic, $15.3 million international. I mean, what is there to say about 10 Things I Hate About You that hasn't already been said 10 times over? The one thing that I could say while rewatching this, which I think I've seen this movie like at least 10 times, it made me miss Heath Ledger. Like, I love Heath Ledger, but this movie just made me miss him so much. I love Julia Stiles in this film. I love there's so many good characters in this movie. I mean, just like you got Allison Janney, who she only really has like 2 scenes in it, but Allison Janney's funny in her small parts. Larissa Olenek. I remember her from the Secret World of Alex Mack on Snick. So like, I always kind of had like a little bit of a crush on her. So seeing her in this, I was like, hell yeah. She hasn't really done. I mean, she's basically been TVs after this, but she's kind of naive and whiny in this until the end, when she kind of like becomes a little bit of a badass. But Julia Stiles is great. David Krumholtz is hilarious in this film. I love David Krumholtz in this. Gabrielle Union, this was like one of her first films. Like this is like before, like, actually no, this was after Bring It On, wasn't it? Or was Bring It On after this?
Same year.
Same year.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. This is actually 1 year earlier. This is 1 year earlier.
I always think Bring It On was 98, but
Bring It In was 2000.
2000s movie, yeah. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. This was him like kind of like getting out of like the Third Rock from the Sun kind of limelight and kind of taking over like TV roles. I think Larry Miller does a great father part. And my secret little MVP, because I loved every scene this guy was in, and I don't think he gets any credit at all, is Daryl Mitchell as Mr. Morgan. That teacher, every time he talks and he goes after Andrew Keegan's Joey Donner, I laughed. I love that teacher. If I had that teacher, I would like always be like paying attention to that class, because that just seems so fun to have a teacher like that. Which actually, you know what? Scratch that. I had a teacher like that. It was I'm blanking on her name. I think it was Mrs. Kelly. She was my speech teacher. And if it wasn't Mrs. Kelly, I apologize, but I remember who she is. She was awesome. But it's the only downside to 10 Things I Hate About You. But I think this is more of it just emphasizing the Shakespearean parts. That is such a weird high school. There's so many weird things happening in that high school. Like, that's like, is it a prep school? Is it a public school? Because if it's a public school, they do a lot of weird things in that school for it to be public. If it's a prep school, be like, that makes sense. But it's such a weird school. And but I love the movie. It's got great moments. It's got great dialogue. It's got great emotional weight for Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger's characters. They are characters that grow throughout the film and become better. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character's got growth. Larissa Olenek, she's got growth. All the characters got growth throughout the film. It's funny. It's got heart. It's everything. Brian, go ahead and talk about 10 Things.
Yeah, I mean, the late 90s kind of area and early 2000s, they were pumping out like these teen high school flicks, like, you know, practically every weekend there'd be a new one. So, I mean, and most of them were, you know, throwaway things, they're passable, you'll forget about them, things like that. And there's a few of them that kind of stood out. And this is one of them that I think really stood out. Now, part of it was the cast, which actually at the time, most of them were pretty much unknown. I mean, you had Joseph Gordon-Levitt had been on TV, Larissa Olenek had been on TV. Julia Stiles was really nobody. Heath Ledger at the time was really nobody. Yeah. And so I mean,
Holtz was a nobody.
So it was basically a kind of nobody to push it, but it kind of stood out. I think just because I think the fact that it was another one of these kind of new takes on Shakespeare, I think that helped, because it was kind of a classic story. It's just the taming of the shrew kind of thing. But, you know, anytime you take something like that and put it in a new setting is always kind of fun. But, I mean, I think it's smartly written. I think the cast, I mean, as inexperienced as most of them were, I think did a great job. I agree with you in that it made me miss Heath Ledger, but especially because this is one of only a handful. I mean, I'm talking like 2 or 3 roles where Heath Ledger got to do something light and fun. I mean, there's like this and kind of Knight's Tale, and that might be about it. Other than that, he did a lot of very serious roles, dramas, you know, or I mean, he got to have some fun being the Joker, obviously, but that was still kind of a dark movie. It wasn't.
I mean, that put a lot of weight on him during that.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a light, fun movie. But I forgot until I rewatched this just how funny and how fun he could be. You know, and like just seeing him smile, like, oh yeah, that's right, he used to smile.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, outside of Knight's Tale, which I also love that film. Like, that is one of my favorite films, Knight's Tale. The closest thing I can see on his IMDb that would be remotely close to anything of fun is The Patriot, and that's not a fun movie.
There's The Brothers Grimm, which should have been fun, but it wasn't very good at all.
Such a bad movie.
Yeah,
but,
that wasn't good.
I mean,
that should have been fun.
I'm sure if he was in the whole film, his last film, The Imaginary Dr. Parnassus, probably would have been a little more fun.
I don't think so, because by then Terry Gilliam, who also did Brothers Grimm, by the way, was making his stuff. It was very weird, and even his brand of comedy was not like a fun brand of comedy. It's more like a weird kind of, I don't know. But so I don't think that movie would have been much better, even if it wasn't the whole thing. But yeah, I do miss Heath Ledger from back then. So
It makes me sad because it's just like if he had still been alive today, I'm just wondering how many him and Leo. I'm sure we would have had a movie with those two by now. Him and Brad Pitt. Like I just keep thinking about all these like other people he could have worked with, and just like how many great films.
That's why I appreciate something like A Knight's Tale, because you look back on that movie, you got him, you got Alan Tudyk, you got Paul Bettany in that. It's like it's just a great cast. Oh, and then I forget the guy's name. He was in Full Monty.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about King? From Game of Thrones, Baratheon, King Baratheon.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up.
Oh, for some reason I want to say Eddie, but that's not right.
This is killing me because I literally had Mark Addy.
That's what it is. But yeah, I mean, that was just one of those where you had a great cast together, and they obviously had fun making that movie.
And trust me, guys, if Knight's Tale falls on our weekend, we are 100% talking about Knight's Tale. But I actually think we checked, and it doesn't. So we won't be talking about it this year. But we will eventually talk about Knight's Tale.
I mean, it's kind of odd in this. Like, even Larissa Olenek, I kind of thought her career would take off after this. She didn't. She's kind of went to TV. Julia Stiles obviously had a little bit of success after this. She did
like Save the Last Dance after this.
And then she was in some of the Bourne movies and things like that.
She's in all the Bournes.
Is she in all of them? Okay.
Yeah, she's in all of them. She might not have been in the Renner one, but she's in all the Matt Damon ones.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's so good.
This is definitely kind of one of those standout. In a time when there was so many teen comedies, this is kind of one that stood out. And it's kind of still lasted the test of time because it's still fun to watch. And
like I said, this was up against like the American Pies and stuff where like you had the funny high school raunchy, and then you had the high school, like, I don't want to say normal, but it like you could have a great hot raunchy comedy with them, and you could have a non-raunchy comedy with these guys. And this is one of those like we just passed 22 years now since it came out? 22?
Yeah.
And it still holds up. I still enjoyed it just as much watching it. Actually, I enjoyed it more because of Heath Ledger being gone. Like, it just made me miss him. Like I said, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, seeing him, and like just everyone else. Like, there's just so many small, great little moments. Like, this is one of those movies that's like, yes, everyone talks about the 10 Things I Hate About You poem. But there's just, if you like, what's your favorite moment of this movie? I think there are.
Actually, the poem is my least favorite moment of the movie.
Most people will pick that. But there's probably about 20 moments in this film that people can point out going, that's my favorite moment. That's my favorite moment. You have Heath Ledger singing to Cat in the stands. You've got...
When he sings, Jane, you got a gun. Oh, wait, wrong movie. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Another movie that has to go with not another teen movie. Brian can't let this go. But, I mean, there's so many funny little just moments. You could pick almost every scene out of this film, and it is a memorable moment. That's how these movies will stand the test of time. Is that like it's not just one big moment; it's all the little moments in between. Which is why it was our feature. It's one of those films that we both liked fondly. This and Phone Booth, which is why we wanted to talk about it. And I'm sure everyone who's seen 10 Things I Hate About You either loves it or thinks it's overrated. You know who I'm talking about when I say thinks it's overrated. But yeah, I think there's very few people out there who's like, to a 10 Things. I think a lot of people either love it or they hate it. We are definitely both in the love it train. Anything else for 10 Things?
No, you can watch it on Disney Plus though.
Yes, you can definitely watch it on Disney Plus. And now, yes, my pick might have been the stinker, but this was our actual stinker of the week. Now, we talked about this last week. When we have a stinker, there's two kinds of stinkers. There is the dull, boring stinkers that were miserable watching the entire time, like last week with Lady Killers. And then there's the so bad it's funny, and we can poke fun at it and have a blast watching it, which is the stinker that we had this week. It is the I can't remember how I described this, the action duo combination of 1997's Double Team. Double Team came out April 4th, 1997, had a budget of $30 million, had a weekend opening of $5 million. It was number 5 its opening weekend behind Liar Liar in its third week, The Saint in its first week, The Devil's Own in its second week, and That Old Feeling in its first week, and it finished with $11.4 million. Now, I had seen this movie when it came out because it's Jean-Claude Van Damme, and of course, me being a basketball fan and a pro wrestling fan, Dennis Rodman was in this. So I was like, sure, I'll watch this. And of course, Mickey Rourke is in it also. Brian had never seen this movie prior to this. This was an experience. I don't remember.
That it was.
I knew this movie was bad, but damn, I didn't remember it being this bad. Brian, take it away. Double Team. This was the first time you got to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I had never seen it. Now, Jean-Claude Van Damme is one of those who I can usually accept his movies for what they are. You know, they're not high cinema, but I mean, I've seen, you know, I remember seeing some of his movies like Lionheart and some of these things in the theater, and people like cheering at the fight scenes and stuff, and it is what it is. But this one, for some reason, I never saw, and which is surprising because I mean, I was a Chicago Bulls. I mean, this is like Chicago Bulls championship era, you know. But the thing is that
97, 98. This is
yeah. But even then, I mean, Dennis Rodman was just, you know, at the time he was just too much over the top, and actually most people in Chicago didn't. I mean, they liked him as a basketball player, but didn't really care much for him, and maybe that's why I avoided it. I don't know, but I never saw this movie until now, and it was pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. It was Dennis Rodman playing himself. It was Jean-Claude Van Damme doing the same character he does in every other movie he does. But it's full of just bad dialogue, bad story, and I don't even know why this makes it so much worse than other ones. I mean, the director, as far as I can tell, this is the only English language movie he made. So I wonder if he even spoke English. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was trying to direct through an interpreter, because this movie is a mess.
You and I made this comparison. I think about 10 minutes into the movie. It's like, is this The Room but with action? And we both went, "Hi, Dennis."
They would deliver dialogue. It would be, oh my gosh, it was
the way it was shot, like epic zoom ins every 5 seconds of close, like you had to be this close, like this nostril and eye shot of Jean-Claude. Just the way the the transitions through scenes, the way there's this weird part during this one action sequence in the beginning where it's like Mickey Rourke and Jean-Claude Van Damme had this like shutter vision that they could see like someone coming at them with a gun, which was never shown throughout the rest of the movie. But in this scene, they had this ability. Oh god, it's so bad that it's so comically bad that you're just like, there's just so many things to talk about. Let's
start with the fact that there's a whole colony storyline.
Okay, we're gonna go with the colony. Okay,
let's just start with that. Like, we'll start with basic plot. We'll start with that. Okay, basic plot is Jean-Claude Van Damme is this anti-terrorist guy, and he's trying to take somebody down. Mickey Rourke plays the villain in this, along with a bad stunt double in those scenes. Very obvious.
Mickey Rourke does all his stunts.
Yeah, sure he does.
Yeah.
Basically, but in this operation to apparently capture him, Mickey Rourke's kid is killed. Which we'll go into parts of that scene later.
I literally just remembered the one part.
But I'm just getting the basic plot out of the way.
Yes.
So there's that. And so basically the rest of the movie is essentially he wants to get revenge on Jean-Claude Van Damme's character. Because
he literally has like 1,000 chances to kill Jean-Claude, but he doesn't want to do it.
But he doesn't, because instead he wants to, you know, he captures his pregnant wife and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that. But then there's this, after that initial operation, for some reason, apparently Jean-Claude Van Damme's character is essentially arrested because apparently he's, you know, too dangerous to let out in the world, but he needs to be imprisoned. You know, he's too useful to kill. So it's like, they keep him in this, they call the colony, which is apparently like a penal colony, but it's also a think tank because
it's like a rich resort, but Alcatraz.
Yeah, because they want to keep all these counterterrorism people who they aren't allowed out in the world, but they'll stay there and use them like a think tank to help them evaluate and, I guess, plot anti-terrorism things, even though that's never been like his, I mean, he's not known for his brain.
Yeah, he's a brawn guy, but okay.
Yeah, so there's this whole segment of the movie, which is just him in this prison, which really, I think we both said, it feels like they got to the end of this movie and realized, oh, we only have like an hour-long movie. We need to shove in another, 20 minutes, half hour. What can we do? Let's just tack this on.
We got a lot of futuristic stuff maybe left over from Demolition Man. Let's throw it into this film.
Something. So I mean, there's that whole thing, and let's go ahead and let's
Okay,
back up.
let's we're gonna leave Rodman out of this for now. Let's go to that first act action scene with inside the was it an amusement park? Was it fair or
carnival or something?
Yeah, something like that. I shit you not. If Jean-Claude Van Damme was probably the most paid actor. I'm sure Rodman got a good tick. I'm sure Rourke got a good kick. But you know who probably deserved the biggest paycheck?
The tiger.
The fucking tiger. This tiger. My God. First off,
which, by the way, there's like a tiger in 2 or 3 different parts of this movie, and I'm not even sure it's supposed to be. It's not the same tiger, as far as I know.
It's not the same tiger, but it might as well be because this
the director's
tiger,
obsessed with tigers.
Yeah, this tiger and Mickey Rourke are like this. There's one point, like Jean-Claude and this female sniper who, quote unquote, she literally says this, can shoot the dick off of a hummingbird. Actual dialogue in this movie. They're hiding in this upper perch, and a fair
up on this tower,
high up. And Mickey Rourke's like hugging his kid, and Mickey Rourke looks at this tiger, and this tiger goes, and that immediately makes Mickey Rourke notice that Jean-Claude and this woman is on the perch, and he takes
in the middle of a crowded amusement park. There's people everywhere. There's people and animals looking every direction, but because this one tiger goes. He goes, what? Looks behind him and sees, oh, there's Jean-Claude Van Damme. Not only is he turning the right direction, but he sees him up in the perch. And it's like, thanks, tiger.
We're both like, how the fuck does he realize that the tiger knows what he's talking about?
It's like the tiger might was like going,
hey. They're right there.
What's that?
and then there's a tiger in the third act where it's like this tiger is so like he wants to eat the baby. Like he doesn't care. He's like hunting the entire it's supposed to it looks like the Colosseum in Italy, but it's not.
Yeah, it's clearly much smaller, yeah.
This tiger is really just growing through the Colosseum hunting this baby.
Well, and then even before that, the whole way that it starts out is he gets Jean-Claude Van Damme into the middle of this Colosseum, and he has these little crosses marking wherever he's planted mines in the ground. And so he's going to have this tiger, attack Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he has to also avoid the mines. But the tiger doesn't know that the crosses are demarking the mines, but he knows how to avoid them all. So. Yeah,
that tiger could have easily just walked right out, stepped on a mine, and be like, well, there goes that plan. But no, because
he's not exactly a James Bond villain, is he?
Yeah, because it's a movie, the tiger has to avoid the mines at all times.
Yeah.
Apparently, they can't avoid the mines, but the tiger can. Without any problem.
The mines, which later on the action comes back to the Colosseum, Dennis Rodman has apparently mysteriously at some point had time to move all the markers. Never told Jean-Claude Van Damme this, but apparently Jean-Claude Van Damme was still able to avoid them, but Mickey Rourke was not. And it's just like, granted, he could have been moving them around as Mickey Rourke and Jean-Claude Van Damme were fighting, but you would think we would have caught him in the background, going. Yeah, but again, that's great if that's your plan to trick Mickey Rourke's character. But you didn't tell Jean-Claude Van Damme. He has no way of knowing you moved him. He could have stepped on one.
Because there's one point where he thought he stepped on one, and he was like, "Shit!" And then Rodman was like, "Hey, I moved him." Like Jean-Claude Van Damme just moves his foot. Like, what, dude? You don't know. He just moves his foot off. Like, oh, we're good. Like, no, you don't know you're good. There are too many out there for Rodman to move around. But we jumped around. But back to the circus or the fair. There are so many innocent bystanders that are killed in this film.
Oh my gosh!
And most of them are women. It's like this
director. First of all, he loved to put kids in danger.
Yes,
and he loved to just gun down women. Now there's several people die in this opening scene, and then later on there's a scene in I don't know, it's Italy or something.
The way this scene this was a massacre.
Oh yeah,
there up to 20 or 30 people, innocent people, were shot and gunned down during this thing. And then the one moment which I couldn't stop laughing. There's this scene inside the fair is going on for probably about a good 5 minutes solid. And they go past this one scene, and there's all these people still on the spinner. And I'm like, wait a second, why are they still on the ride?
And they weren't even screaming and cheering, they're just riding the ride.
And I'm like, okay, so one of two things happen. Either A, they're still letting people on the ride while everyone's getting shot around them, or B, the guy who controls
the operators took off.
These people are stuck, just going. Which makes it that much better because Once again, Jean-Claude Van Damme like climbs.
We should have showed that.
He climbs past. There's no way I can find that footage. He climbs past them as they're just going. Woo-wee. It just leaves them, and it's great because Brian will go. Wait a second. There's no way that happened because like a ride at a fair, it's like 90 seconds, 2 minutes tops. This has been at least 5 minutes max.
Oh yeah.
Like 5 to 10. These poor people are still going. That or there's one is like, all right, next 15 people, come on in. Forget these bullets. But this whole circuit,
so I think it's the people in line. They insisted, no, we waited in line for half an hour. You're letting us on.
Went on this thing. That's what would happen in Walt Disney if a shootout happened. It's like, no,
Absolutely.
I want to Galaxy's Edge and I want to ride the Millennium Falcon. but it's this whole circus act thing. It's in the first act. It is like it's a third act like battle. Because I'm watching like sometimes like this is how like you end the movie. This is not how you start the film. Because it's like a 20-minute.
And what got me is that you described it as like this massacre because so many people die, but it's like it wasn't even like terrorists are here gunning down people and the good guys are trying to stop them from doing it. It's the terrorists are only trying to shoot the people trying to shoot at them, but just like everybody's getting in the way and getting gunned down. Yeah,
everyone is just like there is no like dropping to the ground. It's run for your lives, hope to God a bullet doesn't hit you, and the bullet hits all of you. Like no one's like dropping. Everyone's just like run.
Or even hiding behind things. They're just running frantically.
No. I mean, it's like Duck Hunt. It's just everyone's up for grabs at this point. But it's just like, and then like I said, after that you get the whole colony scene, which Brian's got the greatest scene ever in the colony scene. We get a montage of Jean-Claude Van Damme training, and for some reason, granted, he's trying to make himself stronger. But he literally ties the bathtub, and he starts like I'm assuming he's trying to do like deadlifts, but it literally looks like he's screwing the bathtub. And he's just going.
Even at one point, he's got it like he got tied around his neck or something, and he's like standing up and doing these lifts, but he's making it like and at the end he's like
this weird moment. It's like and Ryan goes, here goes the big finish. He goes yeah.
It was just seriously. If you edited that together with, I think it was a later scene. I said you should edit it together with something Dennis Rodman did. It would totally look like the two of them were having sex.
He really, really could. And then we get Rodman.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't expecting a great acting performance for Rodman, but this is where the movie like annoyed us because he has so many basketball jokes. I think we counted like 8 basketball.
First of all, Dennis Rodman's like. He's in like one scene, disappears for like 45, 50 minutes of the movie. He's
in the beginning.
Which is because of the tacked on colony part, really.
Yeah, he's right before the circus scene. He's like kind of like, is it Q that has all the tech for Bond? Is it Q?
Yeah.
He's kind of like Q. And then you know, you have the whole circus scene, then you have the whole colony scene, and then Rodden finally comes back into the movie. And he decides I'm just gonna team up with Jean-Claude to take down Rourke. But he's making basketball puns like the best offense is a good defense. Basketball.
He makes all these basketball references. He's not a basketball player in the movie. He's not even a former basketball player. Not a basketball fan as far. He's just.
They never bring up basketball.
They only make it's obviously a reference because the audience knows it's Rodman, so it's got to make these. But there's no reason for him to make these basketball references.
I mean, like he's got a parachute. He's got a parachute that opens up into a basketball. Okay. We get it. Ha ha ha. He's a basketball player.
Yeah.
And then we got to the point where it's like, okay, that's like 8 basketball jokes. This is starting to get annoying. Then the movie decides to go, fine, fuck you guys. You don't like basketball jokes, then you ain't getting basketball jokes. Then
right when the 2 most obvious ones were there.
Stuff happens in the movie that is clearly a basketball joke. And we're like, nothing. We're like,
nothing.
What? Like, how could you not give us the basketball joke?
Like, at first he literally gives Jean-Claude Van Damme an alley-oop.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then there's one where he takes a guy, throws him basically in the window, like basically through it, like it's a basketball throw.
Nothing but hole. Nothing. And we're just, it got to the point where it's like, you over-berated us with basketball jokes that now Brian and I were waiting for it. And then we was like, no, fuck you. You ain't getting them now. And we're just like, no, come on. You have to give them to us now. Which I guess was the whole movie's point. But because every time he brought up the basketball stuff beforehand, it was like, okay, you're just throwing them in. It's like, it's almost like you only had so many jokes you could use, and they used them all up. And then by the time they were like, oh, we finally came up with something, it was like, nope, you can't have them now. You hit your basketball joke limit. And it's just, and then you bring the colony shit back in, which it has no purpose in the film. It really does.
Yeah, it's tacked on again at the end for no reason. Paul Freeman shows up, who Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark, who I never realized how bad a career he had outside of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But he shows up again for no reason at the end, and it's like he's pointing a gun at him for no reason. If he lets him go, and it's a whole big thing.
Yeah, we're not gonna touch on that, but there's one part. I believe it's in Italy. Brian had a huge problem with this part. The
sniper.
Sniper, yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the massacre at the beginning. Okay, so most of this movie is essentially Jean-Claude Van Damme trying to get his wife back, trying to get this one woman back. And in the meantime, he doesn't care if he destroys 1,000 other families, because again, in Italy, you have this massacre where just people are dying left and right. A lot of women, but people are getting shot.
Yeah, it's like every time they show someone getting shot, 9 times out of 10, it's women getting shot. And
at one point, there's like 4 or 5 guys with machine guns, shooting in and then at one point, he points up to the roof of this one and goes, "Oh, sniper on the roof." It's like, that's nice that you point out the one sniper on the roof with a sniper rifle. There's 5 guys down here with machine guns gunning everybody down in rows.
There's a guy on a horse literally going, and there's the one sniper. And
you're worried about the guy with a slow bolt-action sniper rifle,
Dennis Rodman, sniper. It's like, no, kill the fucking machine gun guy.
Kill the guy who just mowed down 10 people in a wedding party over here.
There was that one shot where like the camera got way too, because like I said, the camera was got way too close. It was going past the bride. The bride's like, this movie's so bad that it's great. Like, it's like we were watching. I was like, did we actually like this movie? Like, it's horrible, but we were actually having fun with it.
We didn't like it. We had a fun time watching it together. I will not equate that with liking it.
It is definitely something that, like, if you guys want to watch a bad movie with a bunch of friends and just poke at it and have a good time laughing at how bad it is, then Double Team is perfect for that. Now, if you want to watch it as like a movie, don't, because they even had the nerve. And I honestly, God, I told Brian this, I thought this was a spinoff, and it's not. But there's also a movie called Simon Says with Dennis Rodman. I thought it was a spinoff of this character from Double Team, and it's not. It's a whole separate character.
Which I think we might be talking about later in the year.
We might be. If it's on the weekend, we might be talking about it. But it's one of those things where it's like, we thought that it was the same character. It's not. It's a whole different other character that basically...
We just thought that because apparently Dennis Rodman can only play one role himself. So
Exactly. But, Double Team, it's a really bad movie, but damn, did it make Brian and I just laugh our asses off watching it. It's, like I said, it's the action movie version of The Room. It really is.
It is, especially Dennis Rodman's dialogue. It's bad.
It's everyone's dialogue, and then of
everyone's
course,
dialogue. Yeah,
you can't get past Jean-Claude Van Damme fucking a bathtub. You just can't. You can't. Brian, is Double Team on any streaming services right now for people?
Not for free, so you get to shell out money if you want to watch this one.
Yeah. So at your own risk. How about this? Have 4 or 5 of your friends all come over to watch it. Have them each put in like 50 cents. And you guys
there you go.
There you go. But yes, that covers the episode today for the Weekend Crusaders. Like I said, weird list of movies. We had 2 picks that we liked when we saw them the first time that didn't grow on us over the years. We got 2, like I would say, that's a real joke. We had a modern day classic that everyone loves. We have an underrated gem that people who've seen it love, but most people haven't seen it. And then we had Double Team. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next week, this is going to be a good week. I'm really excited about the movies that we got next week. I think we got 4 really good movies that we can actually like talk about, like have some good meat on the bone to talk about, and then we got a stinker that I think is gonna rival Double Team. It's gonna rival Double Team. We got We've got a comedy that I like fondly, that Brian does not remember very fondly. So we'll see if that we can change Brian's mind on that film. We've got a stinker of epic proportions. I have not seen this, but I've only heard
Neither have I.
I've heard the greatest of bad things about this movie. So
we're hoping it will be Street Fighter level.
Street Fighter level meets
We'll
Double Team, kind of like that happy little medium. We've got a modern day meta gem that Brian loves and I'm kind of okay with. And then we got two, I would say one's more of an action comedy and then one's just like a straight up raunchy kind of high school comedy that we're both very fond of, that we both, I think, are excited to come back to and watch again and see if we, like I said, love them like we did back in the day. So good luck with those. I think it's going to be a fun episode next week. I can't wait to get into these movies and talk about them with Brian. And then, of course, this weekend, obviously, Kong vs. Godzilla came out. Brian and I are going to have an episode. We are going to do a spoiler cast episode talking about Kong vs. Godzilla. Brian is Team Kong. I am Team Godzilla. We will see how it plays out because I'm actually about ready to watch it right now as soon as we're done filming this. So I cannot wait to end this so I can go watch Godzilla and versus Kong. But until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.